وعدتهم ومن صلح من آبائهم وأزواجهم وذرياتهم إنك أنت العزيز الحكيم وقهم السيئات ومن تق السيئات يومئذ فقد رحمته وذلك هو الفوز العظيم إن الذين كفروا ينادون لمقت الله أكبر من مقتكم أنفسكم إذ تدعون إلى الإيمان فتكفرون قالوا ربنا أمتنا اثنتين وأحييتنا اثنتين فاعترفنا بذنوبنا فهل إلى خروج من سبيل ذلكم بأنه إذا دعي الله وحده كفرتم وإن يشرك به تؤمنوا فالحكم لله العلي الكبير هو الذي يريكم آياته وينزل لكم من السماء رزقا وما يتذكر إلا من ينيب فادعوا الله مخلصين له الدين ولو كره الكافرون رفيع الدرجات ذو العرش يلقي الروح من أمره على من يشاء من عباده لينذرهم يوم التلاق يوم هم بارزون لا يخفى على الله منهم شيء لمن الملك اليوم لله الواحد القهار صدق الله العلي العظيم. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بفضل الله بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله والحمد حقه كما يستحقه حمدا كثيرا. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. اللهم لعن أول ظالم ظلم حق محمد وآل محمد وآخر تابع له على ذلك. اللهم لعن العصابة التي جاهدت الحسين وشايعت وبايعت وتابعت على قتله. اللهم لعنهم جميعا. ثم الصلاة والسلام على خير خلق الله أجمعين محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. قال الله العظيم في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وما الحياة الدنيا إلا متاع الغرور. And what is this worldly life except the enjoyment of delusion. آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. So what is ghurur? When we say the word delusion, what do we mean by this? Pretty much it's deceiving oneself of something being what it's not, or you being yourself something that you are not, and being appeased by it. Being appeased by what isn't. This is ghurur, this is delusion. To begin with, as an introduction, when we talk about things in contrast with one another, if we talk about the dunya and the akhirah, if we talk about this world and the next world, if we talk about light and darkness, life and death, day and night, they all in some way complement one another. And likewise, the dunya and the akhirah, this world and the hereafter, are no different. The dunya is complemented by the hereafter. In fact, it is a part of the akhirah. This world is a part of the hereafter. How, one may ask, what we do in this world and the efforts we put forward in this world are what we will reap in the hereafter. So, and everything in the hereafter will manifest in its fullest. You'll get the absolute result of what I've put in the dunya. The one that does for the actual dunya is the one that doesn't enjoy the dunya. The one that does for the akhirah is the one that enjoys both the dunya and the akhirah, the one that works for the hereafter. In Surah Al-Kahf, Allah Azza wa Jal gives a parable about two men. He gives an example of two men. And in this story that he gives, one of them is a believer. And this is our everyday life that people look at. And the believer has nothing. In terms of, when we say has nothing material. Doesn't own. He's not someone that has property. On the other hand, the unbeliever in this story is someone that possesses not one property, but two properties. And Allah mentions them in the Quran as these two properties. He doesn't mention them in a normal way. In fact, this is how He mentions them. He says, وَضْرِبْ لَهُمْ مَثَلًا. Give them this parable. He says, رَجُلَيْنِ. There are two men. Allah mentions, جَعَلْنَا لِأَحَدِهِمَا جَنَّتَيْنِ. So one of them has jannatain. When we say Jannah, generally the word means garden. A lot of the times when people think garden, they think their backyard. Garden doesn't mean this. Garden means property, land. How vast? As vast as it may be. There's no limit on this. So what does God mention about these Jannataini? He says this man that has the two properties. He says, min a'nabin. He says, وَحَفَفْنَاهُمْ بِنَخْلٍ وَجَعَلْنَا بَيْنَهُمَا زَرْعًا. He says, زَرْعًا كِلْتَا عفوا زرعًا. I got to صلوا على محمد وعلى محمد. Got to get the verse because as usual, thankfully the computer has stuffed up the text, so I may be reading the verse incorrectly, so please bear with me. صلوا على محمد وعلى محمد. Okay, so the verse says, وضرب الله مثلا رجلين جعلنا لأحدهما جنتين من أعناب. Okay, وحففناهما بنخل وجعلنا بينهما زرعا. So Allah mentions here in this verse that this example of two men, that one of them has two gardens, he says, and it mentions that these two gardens, he has grapevines, he has vines, so orchards from this, and we bordered them, they bordered the lands with palm trees, okay, and placed within them fields of crops. So imagine how vast this is. And then he says in the Quran, this is what the next verse, he says, كِلْتَ الْجَنَّتَيْنِ آتَتْ أُقُلُهَا. I went back to reading this again. كِلْتَ الْجَنَّتَيْنِ آتَتْ أُقُلُهَا وَلَمْ تَظْلِمْ مِنْهُ شَيْئًا. Okay, so each of these gardens gives its fruits and it never falls short. There's no off season. You know how sometimes the prices go up, they tell you why. The tomatoes weren't produced that well, cucumbers weren't produced that well, apples did. You have all these things, they give you an excuse. Oh, why isn't there any good quality figs? Well, there wasn't that good produce. Well, these two gardens have unbelievable produce. They have so much produce that they never fall short, he mentions in the Quran. وَفَجَّرْنَا خِلَالَهُمَا نَهْرًا. Okay, within them, within these two gardens, there is a river. God's not saying, you've seen those miniature dams that they have on properties. those little made, if you can see those, they look like mini lakes, these little miniature dams, or what are they, where they store water, where the livestock drink. We're not talking about this. It says a river. This guy in his 2 gardens has a river flowing through the 2 gardens. So if you look at this guy literally has 2 banks. You know, in the meaning of wealth, this guy has everything. He has so much wealth. So then while he looks at this, it says, he becomes deluded, and then he is having conversation with the other man. This is what God says in the Quran. When he mentions that he has all this, وَكَانَ لَهُ ثَمَرٌ, that this person had and he had fruit from, in other words, he had wealth in this, then he says, فَقَالَ لِصَاحِبِهِ وَهُوَ يُحَاوِرُ. As he's having dialogue or discussion with his friend, he says to him, أَنَا أَكْثَرُ مِنْكَ مَالًا وَعَزُّ نَفَرًا. Have you ever seen this where rich people say this? You'll see that sometimes they say, I'm richer than you. Or you have heard people say, I can buy you. You've heard these. He says, I am richer than you. Not only that, I have more men. In other words, I have more people behind me. You know, when someone gets rich, the groupies increase around them, the fake friends. And those that get caught up in the hoopla and that, they're all around you and they come to you. And these people aren't there because of you, they're there because of your money and your status. And because you're so deluded, you see this as I have numbers. Have you ever seen, for example, when you look at Floyd Mayweather and he has all those refrigerators around him, and it's so fake, you know, when he even prepares what he's going to do with them and what they're going to do and how they're going to act, and they're just around him because his middle name, money. They want to be there because he has money and he's out there. So this is what happens to people. They start to see this as something of benefit. Then God says in the Quran, وَدَخَلَ جَنَّتَهُ وَهُوَ ظَالِمٌ لِنَفْسِهِ, that Allah says that he enters his garden وَهُوَ ظَالِمٌ لِنَفْسِهِ. In other words, he has been unjust towards himself. How? He's unjust in the manner, he's an oppressor to himself, he has wronged himself with how he has dealt with this. قَالَ مَا أَظُنُّ, he says, قَالَ مَا أَظُنُّ أَن تَبِيدَ هَذِهِ أَبَدًا. You know, he looked at his wealth and he said, this, you know, when you look and you see so much of what you have, this will never run out. You have that feeling. You can have something so little, you know, and you think, all right, you know, I've got a lot of sugar, I'm going to have so much sugar, I've got a lot of flour, I've got a lot of rice, this will never run out. This guy's different. He's looking at gardens that are so vast that they never run out. And he actually believes these will never end, these will never perish. They'll never run out of what they have. وَمَا أَظُنُّ السَّاعَةَ قَائِمَةً. And he said the hour will never come. In other words, I'm never going to die. I'm going to live forever. You know, so these rich people that put money in to live forever and to exist, and they never think of death. You know, it's like people are still striving for the dunya. You know, recently I saw two French celebrities. I think they're Ukrainian origin, and they both died after each other. And one of those that they said died with COVID, you know, one of those ones. So they died after each other. When I saw them, they were in their 70s. If you see the way that they looked like, you know, have you ever seen those mannequins? You know, those dolls where the mouth goes up and down? That's how they looked. They had done so much facial work, you know, so much skin stretching, and their cheekbones were up in the air. They just looked unbelievably fictitious. You know, it was just like the most ingenuine thing you could see. Just fake. And they just dropped dead and they died. See, they do this because they think they're going to live forever. Take a look at politicians that will run for government at a very old age. For example, in Lebanon, the president was running for presidency. He was in his 80s. In his 80s, he still believed, yes, I can still give so much and in other words, take so much. But anyway, وما أظن الساعة قائمة ولئن رددت إلى ربي لأجدن خيرا منها منقلبا. He says, how I don't believe the time will come, the hour will come. Hold on. He says, but if I do return to my God, here's the problem. He says, if I do return to my God, I will see what? I'll see the same thing. Why? I'll explain as we move along. You know, have you ever seen those videos where they show someone that has a massive car collection and he says, this car's from that year, that car, and the cars pretty much own him. He's made a whole storage for the car. The car's there to drive, to enjoy, but he doesn't. He puts them there. This is from that year. That's, you know, there's people that collect cars and just put them. They lose the whole purpose of what a car is. And they chase this world, but they still are deluded with the hereafter being theirs too. Why is that? Because there's this false logic people have in the world, that they actually think because I'm rich, Allah has favored me. Allah favored me because I have money. Allah favored me. You know, when someone has children, he says, I have children, so Allah has favored me over the one that doesn't have children. The one that has is someone that's beautiful, it's attractive, says Allah has favored me, He's made me attractive and hasn't made others attractive. I have this and that because I'm favored. And this means because I'm favored in the dunya, I will be favored in the akhirah. So they actually believe this. If you even notice, you could see this in the kings of old, when they used to die and make their tombs, prepare themselves for the afterlife. So they're going in first class. And everyone else is going to wait. I'm in first class. I was first class in dunya. I'm going to be first class in the hereafter. And in fact, the problem is believers look at them and get affected. They actually think, all right, and you hear this from believers. They say, if these people are so evil, why do things always work out for them? They never work out for them. You're wrong. You think they're working out for them. You think because they like to show that things are working out, that they're actually working out for them. I said to someone I was speaking to recently, I said to him, if you think it's right to do what you think makes you happy, then look at America that has been allowing everyone to do what makes them happy. And all like we are, this country we live in is one of America's lackeys, and that's what America does. You know, they just let you do what you want as long as you're happy. But the reality of it, how many people are on prescription drugs, opioids? How many people are on antidepressant drugs? How many people commit suicide? If they're doing what makes them happy and they are really so happy, why do they kill themselves? That even like one of the things that used to always amaze me was Robin Williams, who was a comedian and committed suicide. And you think you'd see the guy is such a joyful person, but really he was depressed. He was so down. So Allah says in the Quran, لا يغرنكم عفوا لا يغرنك تقلب الذين كفروا في البلاد. Do not be deceived by the way you see the unbelievers moving to and fro through the world and the way that they move around. Do not be deceived to think that they are actually having the best life. You know, sometimes, you know, I'll show you, for example, one of the supermodels, her husband bought her an island, you know, it was shaped like the eye of Isis. You know, Isis is in the Egyptian god, not as in Daesh. And you think this island home, well, they have it all. But really, they're still living in their apartment in New York or something. This is just so they can put it up on Instagram and show the world. Now, this deception is everywhere. Take a look at Banu Israel. Banu Israel up till today have this delusion, not deception. This delusion, this ghurur is present today. Banu Israel, for many years, have said what? We are God's chosen race. God favored us. From us is what? From us is Yusuf, the son of Yaqub. Yaqub was Israel. Okay? We have Yusuf. We have Musa. We have Dawood. We have Sulaiman. We have Isa. They're all of Banu Israel. We are the ones favored by God. We don't deny that God favored Banu Israel, but who did He favor? All of Banu Israel? No. The righteous of Banu Israel. Then you have the people that say, this is the Prophet's wife. These women are favored. That's true. يا نساء النبي لستن كأحد من النساء إن اتقيتن. Yes, you are better than all women if you are righteous. If you're good, you guard against evil, you are better. Then the people say, oh, these are the companions of the Prophet. They are better than everyone else. This delusion once again. Yes, the companions of the Prophet are better than all companions if they are righteous. And this doesn't only stop with even amongst us, the people that believe in Ahlul Bayt. There are people that say, because I'm Shia, I'm born Shia, I'm favored. No, you're not. You have to be someone that is righteous. Even you'll have some people, I remember once I was working with someone, he said, I'm Sayyid, because I'm Sayyid, I am favored. We don't even get punished in the fire of hell because we're Sayyid. And I said, what happened to Abu Lahab? He's a Sayyid. And then he made the major mistake. He said, oh no, a Sayyid's only the son of Fatima. So I said, Imam Ali is not a Sayyid. So he was trying to work out the problem. I said, and you say it's only from the children of Fatima. You're saying all the children of Fatima are favored? No. In ittaqaytun, yes, you are favored if you are righteous. You are a Sayyid and you are righteous, you are better than someone that is not a Sayyid. Definitely, without a doubt. But if you are righteous, there is a condition. Just as if you are a follower of Ahlul Bayt and you are righteous, you are better than someone that is not a follower of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam and is righteous. There's no doubt about that there. Even when you see someone, they come out, and why am I talking about this delusion? You see sometimes one of these, this happens in Lebanon a lot, I don't know if it happens anywhere else around the world, where they get a safira. When I say safira, a woman without hijab, and she'll sit there and she'll sing a song about Imam Ali or Imdah bi Amir al-Mu'minin. And we're talking about, they'll get them, and in some cases they're non-believers, so the hijab's not wajib on them. But sometimes they're of the Shia, they're of this. One of the biggest examples was Bushra Khalil. Bushra Khalil, if people that don't know her, she's from the South Lebanon. She's from a Shia family. Bushra Khalil is someone that gets up and says things about Ali ibn Abi Talib praises. People are sending her around. And once again, she's a safira. And I said to one of the persons, I said, do you know who this woman is? He said, no, okay, she's not a Christian saying this about Ali ibn Abi Talib. This woman is from a Shia family, and she was Saddam's defense lawyer in Iraq. She was Saddam's defense lawyer. A Shia that's Saddam's defense. Could you imagine she's talking about Ali ibn Abi Talib, and she, salawatullahi wa salamu alayh, and she's Saddam's defense lawyer. People don't see this. Or you see the images where women will put up a sword of Dhul-Fiqar resting in their bosom, and they'll put that up as, showing their shaya. Or the dancing mural, the guy that's tattooed with all the names of Ahlul Bayt and he's dancing in a podium in a nightclub. This is delusion in its biggest manifestation. I can't say I'm a follower of Ali ibn Abi Talib and I do the acts of Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan. This doesn't work. This isn't a reflection of you being favored. This is a trial. How will you fare in this trial? I'm strong. I'm being given strength. It's not because you are favored. It's because that's your trial. I'm beautiful. It's not because you are favored, because that's your trial. I'm smart. It's not because you are favored. It's because that's your trial. I'm rich. It's not because you are favored. It's because that is your trial. So how do I know if I'm favored or not? Because if it's not all these, if it was, I'll give you a prime example. If it was this, Pharaoh would have been above Musa. Why did Allah favor Musa? Musa was poor. He had nothing. Musa had nothing. He had to go work as a servant for a man to, as a worker, for a man to, in the end, to marry his daughter. And then he was even looking for fire to get warm. Had nothing. And Pharaoh was the king of Lower and Upper Egypt. He was the king of all of Lower Egypt, the king of Upper Egypt, and what? Had all this power. He was so great. And he ruled and he had all this wealth. He perceived himself to be a deity, a god. That Allah Azza wa Jal favored the poor Musa alayhi salam. The Hebrew, the one that was from slaves. They were the slaves of the Egyptians, isn't that right? Why was he the one that was favored by Allah Azza wa Jal? Before we want to know how we are favored, let's look at what's wrong with delusion to begin with. What's wrong with me having ghurur? Number one, and has to do with the fact that you have no grasp of reality. Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, says, Sukru al-ghaflati wal-ghurur. He mentions it as sukr, the intoxication of ghafla, which is being forgetful or heedless, and ghurur, and delusion. He says, ab'adu ifaqa. Ab'adu ifaqa, to get back to consciousness or to become sober again from these, is further than, he says, min sukr al-khumur. In other words, someone that gets intoxicated with alcohol is more likely to sober before the one that's intoxicated with delusion. This is the problem. Why? You're not in this world. See, people drink to get away from what? Reality. These people at delusion are in this constant, they're having a bender for life. They're going on and on and on without waking up to this world. Another hadith, Amir al-Mu'mineen says, Man gharrahu sarab. Whoever's deluded by the mirage, because mirage is what? It's something that's not there. He says, Man gharrahu sarab, taqatta'at bihi al-asbab. Whoever's deluded by the mirage, taqatta'at bihi al-asbab. He's at wit's end. What does it mean to be at wit's end? To be perplexed, confused. In other words, they will never know what to do. Why? Because they're still chasing the mirage. They're chasing this delusion. And the thing is, what you are promised from the devil, وَمَا يَعِدُهُمُ الشَّيْطَانِ إِلَّا غُرُورًا, that Iblis Shaitan will only promise you what is a delusion. When you get the idea, I don't want to get married. Why not? You get married, you have problems, I'm single, I can do what I want. That's exactly what Shaitan wants you to think. That life is better if you're single. But that's not true. All these people, and I want to tell you, this is the single guys, I want you to know this. All the people that tell you, when I'm single, I get any woman I want, this is what they say. They say this all the time. They're liars. It's not like they're clicking their finger like the Fonz in Happy Days and they come on. No! It's not this. There's effort, there's a problem, it's not like it's a turn on key, she turns up, it's a turn off key, she leaves. They're going to get the phone calls, they're going to get all this other stuff that comes in. But the married guy, the difference to the married guy is this is his marriage. This is his life, this is his wife, not everyone's wife. These other women that they see before marriage are everyone's. They just didn't choose you. Whatever you think, your body is not encrusted in diamonds and rubies. You're just like another guy to them. And they move on. So you being single doesn't make your life any better. This is one of the biggest causes to people living in same gender relationships where they have no children. They think, two breadwinners, let's get the money in. Or even people that don't have children. I remember I saw one woman, she was saying that my husband told me we either get another child or we get a dog. And she said, I chose to have a dog. Because the way that they think about it is, the dog is not the same. They don't have to put the dog through school. But when they realize suddenly they're getting these dog showers, then they're taking them to dog shows, and they do all these 1,000,001 things for them. They're getting them wormed. They go straight down that. And the thing is, the dog does nothing. The dog's not going to do anything for him. It's not a human being. The dog's still an animal that acts on instinct. And the dog is not loyal to you. They're loyal to whoever feeds them. How's that? Well, you see one dog moves from one home to another. How's that possible? So loyalty is to the end. They're loyal to whoever feeds them. But anyway, so these people are deluded. What's another problem with delusion is there's no willingness to see reality. Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam says, بَيْنَكُمْ وَبَيْنَ الْمَوْعِظَةِ حِجَابٌ مِّنَ الْغِرَّةِ. Between you and a maw'idha and an exhortation. When someone's talking to another person, sometimes you have a friend, you're talking to them about religion. Why don't they listen? You have a friend, you're talking. The thing that prevents them is what? They have a veil, and that veil is delusion. They're deluded with this world. They'll sit and listen to you. Yeah. You've sat with that person. You're having a discussion with them and you know you're talking to the wall. Because they're deluded. When they're deluded, there's a veil. They don't hear what you're saying. It's blah, 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 blah. It's gibberish. They're not listening to a word that you're saying, too infatuated with this dunya. Another thing, Imam Ali ibn al-Hussein Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam says, رُبَّ مَغْرُورٍ مَفْتُونٍ. He says, many are what? He says, many a man are deluded and captivated by what? By their own desires. So the delusion comes from their own desires. They desire to see something, someone. You know, sometimes someone sees a relationship or an engagement that they're in or appointment that they're in. They see it in a way that it is not. So they are captivated by this. They are deluded by this. Then he says, يُصْبِحُ لَاهِيًا ضَاحِكًا. That you see them what? That they're oblivious. لاهيا ضاحكا. They're joyful. He says, يَأْكُلُ وَيَشْرَبُ وَهُوَ لَا يَدْرِي. Eats, drinks, doesn't know. لا يدري. يأكل يشرب. Laughing, joying. You look at this person, he's deluded. How can he be? Haven't you seen this? You know, I sit there and I think sometimes, I see an atheist, I go, how are they happy knowing they could die at any moment and they're gone? That's what they believe. How are they so happy? How can someone that has, you know, I've seen people, honestly, come to Islamic centers. They owe people money and they sit there and when you talk about sin, they say, astaghfirullah. And how's this guy sit and knowing that he owes money? Doesn't care. Has robbed people, eating people's heart, taken people that go to Hajj, people that go to Ziyarah, people that do acts so they can be recognized. They live in such a delusion while in their necks they owe people things. And they do not care about this. He says, لَعَلَّهُ قَدْ سَبَقَتْ لَهُ مِنَ اللَّهِ سَخَطَةٌ يَصْلَى بِهَا نَارَ جَهَنَّمَ. He says, perhaps, because they're unaware, perhaps, that he says Allah's wrath has already befallen them for something and as a result of which they will enter the fire of hell. In other words, that these people are unaware they're on their way to hell because they're deluded. طبعا we'll reach the end, I'll explain how to get out of delusion. They're deluded, so they're on their way to hell, but they're deluded about it. They think everything is working out. And the problem is when we're talking about delusion, with God comes in. And when people have what's called delusion with God, that means that they are maghrurin billah. They have a delusion of what God is. There is a verse in the Quran that Allah says, Ya ayyuhan nas, ittaqu rabbakum. Firstly, oh you people, He says, fear God, or guard from God's punishment. This is what it says, ittaqu rabbakum. وَاخْشَوْا يَوْمًا, and fear a day, لَا يَجْزِي وَالِدٌ عَنْ وَالِدِهِ وَلَا مَوْلُودٌ هُوَ جَازٍ عَنْ وَالِدِهِ شَيْئًا. That no son will avail their father. Okay? He says, no father will avail their son. No son will avail their father at all. No one will be able to save anyone on this day. La, you see, no one will say, okay, you know how the Christians, even though in the Old Testament, it actually says that it says this: no father will atone for the sin of their son, and no son will atone for the sin of. You know, it actually says that in the Bible, and then you get the New Testament, and it says Jesus died for everyone's sins. No one will avail you. You will avail yourself. You have to do what's right. Allah mentions this. He says, Inna wa'adallahi haq. Allah is promise. Allah's promise is haq. Now, before, I don't want to go into discussion. People might mention intercession. Intercession, if you go through narrations, says for our followers. For who? The ones that are followers. They've committed sins, but they're followers, and the imams pretty much, they putty up the mistakes so you can enter. They fix up what you've done wrong. These are people that do not fear God. People, and I'll explain what kind of people we're talking about. Because, God forbid, we may fall into this. Then he says, إن وعد الله حق, Allah Azza wa Jal, فلا تغرنكم الحياة الدنيا. Do not be deluded by this world. ولا يغرنكم بالله الغرور. Do not let the arch deceiver, the shaitan, deceive you or delude you when it comes to God. And that's what he'll do. The shaitan will make you think you're doing. They're like these people. They, in autopilot, thinking they're doing right. Allah says in the Quran, قل هل ننبئكم بالأخسرين أعمالا. I will let you know about the ones that lose their actions, the ones that are lost with their actions. الذين ضل سعيهم في الحياة الدنيا وهم يحسبون أنهم يحسنون صنعا. The ones that have deviated in this world, but they think they're actually doing good. They actually consider themselves doing. This is what we're talking about, is a delusion. Number one, don't be too proud of your actions. Don't think I've ever done enough. Don't ever think I've done enough. Don't think I've been to Hajj enough. I've been to Ziyarah enough. I've helped enough people. You know, sometimes I'll sit down, honestly. Someone call me and say, can you come and give a lecture? And I can't be bothered. You know what? I say, you know, I've done enough. No. What do you think any of your lectures have been accepted? One has to be. I have to run. There's someone calls me, I have a problem. I can sit there, oh, I can't be stuffed doing this. I have to get up and run. Allah's telling me, come, escape the fire of hell, I have to run. Why have people ran away from good deeds instead of running to good deeds? You know, I sit there sometimes, you think to yourself, I need help from somebody to do something. Honestly, think to yourself, how many people can you call that will actually come to you immediately? Then think about, out of the percentage of people you chose, how many of them you chose, you'll probably have a list of 1,000 people you know, for example. How many of those 1,000 people can you call and will come and help you when you're in a bad, tight spot? So what happened to the iman? What happened to the deen? So the mu'min, when he hears, he comes. I'm here to help you. I'm here to come to you. You're a mu'min, you're in need, I come here to help you. Bil'aks, look at our communities. You sit there, there's bushfires, they're all donating all this stuff to the bushfires, they're running. That's good. But what have you done for your community? You know, they get a mu'min to do a million things, do this fi sabilillah, but let me give a good face to the white man. I'm not attacking anyone specifically. If you think this hit you, well then you're doing something wrong. You know? As we say in Lebanese, في تحت إيدهم سلة بتنعر. You know? If you have the knitting spike under your arm, it's going to prick you. That's what will happen. So anyway, the other thing is, how do you think people become infallible or abstain from sin? Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam says, Inna min al-asmati alla taghtarru billah. How do you become ma'soom? Is not to be deluded with God. Don't think God, you know, people say, God will forgive. One guy, I remember, he was telling me a story, he was overseas. He was talking to another person, and the person he was talking to was married. And he said that she wanted to sit by ourselves, and he said, you're a married woman, you know, there's nothing can ever happen between us in future. See you later. And she said, we can do a temporary marriage. This is what she had in her head, thinking if she's married, she can do this, God forbid. You're married. So what she said, he said to her, this is haram. She says, Allahu ghafurun rahim. Allah is forgiving and merciful. This is what we're talking about. This is delusion. If you commit adultery and you're a married woman, it's eternity in the fire of hell. Eternity. So you are really questioning God's position. You're trying, God's weak. I'll commit this sin. Who cares what God thinks? That's pretty much what you're saying when you go ahead and commit this sin. The other thing is, do not be persistent in sin. You make a sin, make amends. Don't say, for example, I do this anyway, let me keep going. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, من الغرة بالله أن يصر العبد على المعصية ويتمنى المغفرة. Of the delusion is for you to be persistent in sin and expect mercy. There are people that do this. They express, no, Allah Ghafur Rahim. And let me do it. This is being deluded with God. You do not understand. When we read Dua al-Iftitah, وَأَيْقَدْتُ أَنَّكَ أَرْحَمُ الرَّاحِمِينَ فِي مَوْضِعِ الْعَفْوِ وَالرَّحْمَةِ. You are the most merciful when it comes to mercy. وَأَيْقَنْتُ أَنَّكَ أَشَدُّ الْمُعَاقِبِينَ فِي مَوْضِعِ النَّكَالِ وَالنَّقِمَةِ. When it's wrath, you are the most severe in wrath. Nothing comes close to you. Amir al-Mu'mineen says, وَهَذَا مَا لَا تَقُومُ لَهُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. That the heavens and the earth cannot bear the wrath of God. The heavens and earth, see the heavens and earth? We're not talking about the heavens as in the moon and the sun. We're talking about everything. The whole universe cannot bear the wrath of God. Who are you to bear it? Finally, do not perceive respite as a favor. So, Amir al-Mu'mineen says, كَم مِّن مُسْتَدْرَجٍ بِالْإِحْسَانِ إِلَيْهِ وَمَغْرُورٍ بِالسِّطْرِ عَلَيْهِ وَمَفْتُونٍ بِحُسْنِ الْقَوْلِ فِيهِ. He says, how many people are deluded by what? He says, by what? بِالْإِحْسَانِ إِلَيْهِ. When they see good things are happening. Yes, some people see good things are happening. I've said this from the start. Some people see things are working out. They say, God likes me. Why things are working out for me? Things may be working out because God likes you, but think of the possibility things are working out because of istidraj. That God's saying, let the baby have it. Let him have everything he wants. I want him to come nice and plump when it comes to the dabah. Bring him on the day of judgment. I want him to be ready for this. You know, dhuk, let me feed him. This is something we should fear. Things are working out for me. Don't always look at it as it's a good thing. Always be aware. This could be a fitna. This could be a test. Then he says, وَمَغْرُورْ بِالسِّطْرِ عَلَيْهِ. Sometimes you're not getting exposed. You're doing bad things. You haven't been exposed. Why haven't I been exposed? Allah sometimes is giving you a chance to wake up. Not because He likes you. Sometimes He covers for you because He likes you. But think, what if He's covering for me because He's telling me to wake up? One day I'm going to expose you. And once I expose you, then everything will be known. وَلَا تُخْزِنَا يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. Do not expose me over there. نَسْتَجِيرُ بِاللَّهِ. Finally, he says, وَمَفْتُونٍ بِحُسْنِ الْقَوْلِ فِيهِ. Sometimes we think we're good because people say we're good. You know, you'll be sitting down, someone says, Allah gives you examples of this. Sometimes you're sitting with somebody and they mention someone and you know this person is filthy. They're a bad person. Someone goes, you know this guy is a mu'min. And you smile within yourself. Could you imagine someone saying this about you? And what you are really like this person? Could you imagine that? So don't be deluded. Don't be deluded with yourself and what you are. Okay. So then, back into this story. So he says, I'm all this. Then his friend says, the mu'min says, back to the garden story. He says to him, قال له صاحبه وهو يحاوره أكفرت بالذي خلقك من تراب ثم من نطفة ثم سواك رجلا. Let's look at this point. He said, you disbelieve in the one that created you from earth. Earth, thing we walk on. And then he says nutfa. When we talk, think about this, nutfa. What's he talking about, nutfa? He's talking about that little tadpole with a tail, the sperm. This is what he's actually talking about. Nutfa is that. How big is it? What, 50 micrometers? How big is it? 50 micrometers, you can't even see it. It's microscopic. In fact, they say in one episode of conception, if you were to put all the sperms in a line, they'd go for 6 miles. So that's how insignificant you are. And you're impure. And you're najis. On top of that. You're a najasi. He says, that's what you were. Don't forget this. And then He made you into a man. God made you something significant. You were insignificant. You were impure. Allah made you significant. Then He says to him, sorry about the details, but this is important for us to reflect upon ourselves. he says, لَكِنَّهُ اللَّهُ رَبِّي. This is my God. وَلَا أُشْرِكْ بِرَبِّي أَحَدًا. In other words, he's telling him, you're taking this wealth as a partner with God. You're actually deluded. You actually think this owns you. And this is what Zuhud is. Zuhud's not for you not to have anything. It's good. You're allowed to have everything. But so nothing owns you. You're not owned by things. You're not owned, but it's not like those people, they sit there and their property and everything they have is more valuable than everybody else. You know? And they'll let you know about this. You know? This is an original Louis Vuitton bag. This isn't a fake. They'll want to let you know it's original. And you know, this is so important. They was like, oh, wait. Yeah, you see some women, they're more worried about their handbags, their Prada handbags, than they're worried about their children. Oh my God, where's my handbag? What about your child? No, the handbag, as long as no one touches it, this is an original. It's not a fake bag. You know, they have to let people know. If they're owned by this thing, they're not owned by anything else. They don't own anything, everything owns them. Then he says to him, in this, I'm going to read this verse quickly. Let me just, it goes, then he says, هو الله ربي ولا أشرك بربي أحدا ولو لا إذ دخلت جنتك قلت ما شاء الله لا قوة إلا بالله. He says, and as for me, I believe in God. He says, then why is it that when you enter your own garden, you don't say ما شاء الله لا قوة إلا بالله? Why is it when you look at your wealth and you look, thanks to God that made this, the God that has given me this, not Allah has favored me and made me better than people. No, Allah has given me this, let me use it for what is right. Not I'm rich, I choose. I'm rich, I need to use my wealth in the right place, for the right things. Then he says, إن ترني أنا أقل منك مالا وولدا. Do you see me as someone? He says, if you see me, as someone that is less than you. He says, in wealth. He says, although that you see me less in wealth and children, he says, it may be that my Lord will give me something better than your garden. What is he saying to him? Your garden may not be as good as you think it is. Why? He says, because God could send a calamity from the sky and you could lose everything. It's a very long, several verses. I don't want to go. So, in other words, you could lose it all. Don't be so deluded with what you have. There's a movie for Jet Li. It's called Fearless. It's one of the nicest movies that you could possibly watch. The story in it is unbelievable. It's about this, a guy that's deluded in his own ability. And I don't want to ruin the movie. If someone's deluded in their own strength and wants to defeat everybody. Do you remember a guy called Conor Mcgregor? He was one of those that was so deluded that once he was asked, he said, there isn't a man alive that can defeat me. His actual words were, there ain't a man alive that could beat me. And he said, if Jesus was alive, I would whoop his backside. And he's a Christian. Jesus is his God. This is how his delusion went to. That he saw himself that he could defeat his own God. That's how. Then again, he might have read the Old Testament and seen when Jacob beat God. You know, that could be the reason why he had that presumption. But that's another story. The thing is that I'm trying to say here, and is very important for us to understand, is that delusion can reach this point. One person, he was a powerful wrestler. He used to defeat everyone. I'm talking about real wrestling, not the WWE. So he was a real wrestler and he could beat everyone. He was a Muslim. He looked to the sky and he said, oh Allah, send down Jibreel. I want to see my might against him. How can I beat him? Later he became sick. He became sick that he became completely unable to move, very weak. They put him, he was lying on a stretcher in a bed in a room. He felt something nibbling at his foot. but he was too weak to move. He looked down, he saw there was a mouse. So he started to call out, come, come. The people came to remove the mouse. Then that moment, he remembered what he said. He said, I wanted to fight Jibreel. I can't even remove this mouse off my foot. The delusion of your strength that can be removed in an instant. Everything can be taken off you. Your wealth, your health, your children, your beauty. Everything can be taken. So don't be so deluded with what you have. So how do I know if I'm deluded? Al-Imam Ja'far ibn Muhammad and al-Sadiq sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Salamullah alayhi. Says, Man wathiqa bi thalathatin kana maghrur. So whoever has trust in three things, they are deluded. You want to know if you're delusional? You have trust in three things. He says, Man saddaqa bima la yakun. Whoever believes in the impossible. What does that mean? Whoever believes in the impossible. The ones that believe that there is no God, they're deluded. The ones that believe that they're more powerful than God. You know, have you heard this saying, they say he's richer than God? That's impossible. The one that believes in something that's impossible, the one that believes he's going to live forever, is deluded. What's another form of delusion? The one that believes that this dunya is baqiyah, this dunya will remain, is delusional. It's impossible. Secondly, he says, وَرَكَنَ إِلَى مَنْ لَا يَثِقُ بِهِ. Someone who relies on someone that cannot be, or something that cannot be trusted. You notice the people today, anything the government says, they just believe. Even though the government over and over again lies to them. Anything that someone says, they'll tell you, oh, he's a scientist, that must be true. You know, you get these people, they're pro-science, science must be true. These same scientists, a lot of them don't believe in God. You remember this, when they're actually talking, remember this guy talking doesn't believe in God. Think about that. So how do I trust what he says? That's why you should be taking a measured approach with everything when it comes to someone that cannot be trusted. I cannot trust the scientists of today because they're atheists. I cannot trust the government today because they're lackeys. Just to let you know all the governments I'm talking about. If someone, like, take a look for now. How many governments, I want you to go research this, condemned the handover to the Taliban? Find me how many governments. Research it yourself. And see how many governments actually condemned the handover to the Taliban. The Taliban that was called a terrorist entity in 2001 was given Afghanistan back in 2021. How many countries condemned it? These governments, how do I take their word? When they do not condemn oppression. And every government, I'm saying every, and I'm saying this about every single government, chooses which oppression is bad and which oppression is okay. Do you understand what I mean? Everyone's selective. For example, the oppression of Muslims in China is bad in the Western eyes. Why? Because China's the enemy right now. But the Saudis that are smashing Yemen right now, they don't perceive this as a great oppression there. Then he says, Salamullah alayhi, he says, وَطَمِعَ فِيمَا لَا يَمْلِكُ. The third thing to know if you are delusional, that you avidly desire what you do not possess. What don't you possess? What? Everything. Nothing in this dunya you possess. So why do you desire what you don't possess? It's yours. You think it's yours. You possess nothing, so how do I desire this? That's how you know you're deluded. So how do I save myself from delusion? Number one, know that you are from earth and that you will return to the earth. You're created from the earth and you will return to the earth. You will not have that delusion. This will remove all delusion. If you notice, these people that turn their cheek from people, see themselves above people, Think about this. One day you'll be a thing that's not even worth mentioning. Everything will have no value. You lose the scale of things. Everything will look like a gharad in the dunya. This is just a means for me to move along. The problem is, if I don't have this, I will overvalue what is insignificant and I will devalue what's important. Sulaiman ibn Abd al-Malik ibn Marwan, the 7th Umayyad king. I hate using the word caliph. I've made it a rule for myself. It was one of my New Year's resolutions that I will only call them kings because that's what they are. The 7th Umayyad king, Sulaiman ibn Abd al-Malik ibn Marwan, they say was a handsome man. El Guapo. They say this man was very handsome, and he'd work, he'd get dressed, and he'd come out in his nice garments. One day as he came out, he said, this dunya would be so good if there was no death. I would love this dunya so much if there is no death. One of his handmaids turned around. She said, "O king." That's not what she said. Oh, whatever he is. You know, whatever paraphernalia you put on your feet he was. She said, "O king." She said, if it wasn't for death, you wouldn't become the king. If the person before you didn't die, you would never have become the king. And the funny thing with his story is Al-Walid ibn Abd al-Malik, his brother, tried to give the power to his son Abdul Aziz ibn Walid instead of Sulaiman. And he's actually pushing. He had Al-Hajjaj ibn Yusuf Thaqafi on his side. He pushed to give him the power, but he died just before he could do it. Do you know how long Sulaiman ibn Abd al-Malik ruled for, that he fought to keep this kingship? How long did he rule? As the same as the first king of the usurpers, 2 years. For all he could to get a rulership for 2 years. Delusional. That's what they are, they're delusional. Okay. Today, why are we so deluded? Why are we so deluded? Why do you think that my way is what's best? How do we rise as a people? Because every nation has its own ways. Our ways, our traditions have all been forgotten. People don't use them anymore. We are now too worried about ourselves as individuals and nothing else. And we have lost our concern for the coming generations. In fact, people are too preoccupied with getting government favors and subsidies instead of going out for what's right and teaching what is needed. And we always say only God will cure our illnesses. We only say it, but we're not proactive in this. Why is it, people, I need you to listen to this, why is it that people have turned away? Because people have turned away from the Quran. People have turned away from the Imams. People have turned away from the scholars, the ulama. Someone says to me, how do I know? Most scholars are good. But how do I know where the heretics are? The heretics are louder, that's all. How do I know who's good, who's heretic? Go back to the lecture I gave in November, how to deal with doubts. Look it up. Go to minute 40, so you don't have to listen to the whole thing. Minute 40, click on it. It tells you how to choose between, this is not my words, the words of Ahlul Bayt. How to choose between the scholar that you should listen to and the scholar that you should not. Minute 40, how to deal with doubts. Watch that. Then you will know what is righteous. You'll be able to cure your delusion by knowing yourself. Lao Tzu, whoever they say, Lao Tzu was the, he could have been, I'm not saying he is, he could have been a prophet because they made the Taoism after him. They made a religion. They say he's the founder of Taoism. Let's say, but of the sayings he says, very relevant, he says a man that knows another man, is wise. But a man that knows himself is enlightened. To know who you are. Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullahi wa salamu alayh says, Min ayn wa fi ayn wa ila ayn. Where did you come from? Where are you now? Where are you headed? Once you know all this, you will know your value and you will not be deluded. Remember, you were created to be completely independent. You were given the biggest trust from Allah Azza wa Jal, and you were given the biggest opportunity. Who other than you has the opportunity to be the neighbor of God. في مقعد صدق عند مليك مقتدر. Meaning the neighbor of God, Allah Azza wa Jalla is not in a set place, not a Wahhabi literal thought. But the neighbor of God is في جوار الله, being in the neighborhood that Allah Azza wa Jalla has elevated and selected, that you are in His presence in the full meaning of the word. You are with Muhammad wa al Muhammad salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi. Why? Choose what's less. بل تؤثرون الحياة الدنيا والآخرة خير وأبقى. Why do you prefer this world when the next world is better and it is eternal? Now, as I mentioned, do not let, so know who you are, and do not let your possessions own you. Own your possessions instead. Now, if you take a look, the Prophet didn't come and tell the people, come to Islam. You give me one hadith where the Prophet said, come to Islam so you can lose the dunya. There's no hadith that says that if you come to Islam, you will lose the dunya. In fact, the people that live the best lives are the Muslims. The people that live the best lives are the believers. Rasulullah says, فَأَجِيبُونِي. That's what he told them. He said to them, فَأَجِيبُونِي تَكُونُ مُلُوكًا فِي الدُّنْيَا وَمُلُوكًا فِي الْآخِرَةِ. Answer me. Answer my call. You'll become kings in this world and you'll become kings in the hereafter. What is a king? Muluk. You're in control. You own. Nothing owns you. Allah doesn't want you to live in this world and have nothing. He's given you everything. But He tells you the best way to get everything is not to allow anything to own you. Not to be deluded with. Take a look, if you looked at this world in its reality, how would you react to it? Just like when you take the wrapper off something. I buy a television, I take the box off. That box I throw it away. This is the dunya. The dunya is that box. It was just there to carry the television. Once it's done, it's off, ripped up in the recycling box or out on the curb for the biannual cleanup. This is the only way you can escape this matrix in the world that we live in. People are so deluded, I said, with what will give them happiness. This is where the delusion comes from. If I marry this person, I'll be happy. If I get this job, I'll be happy. If I buy this house, I'll be happy. If I get this car, I'll be happy. How many people do you know left their homeland? How many people fight today to get a visa to come to the West, thinking they'll get happiness when they come? How many people are fighting to go back to their homelands because they want to save their children, thinking they'll get happiness by going back there? La hon wa la honik. There they have their problems, here they have their problems. But the mu'min is happy wherever they are. The believer is happy wherever that they are placed. And that's why you'll find those that chase the dunya and are deluded by the dunya. Like I said, the billionaires that are depressed, the celebrities that commit suicide, the people on drugs, the people that have achieved the goals that they were setting out and then realized. As one musician said, he said, while I'm giving my show, I'm so happy. When the crowd goes and the lights turn out and I have to go back to reality. Because he can feel at that point. It's all a delusion. He knows this. And then finally, that's why they turn to something else that covers the reality for them. Al-malu wal-banoon. Allah says in the Quran, zinatul hayat ad-dunya. It's the adornment of this worldly life. It's just a zini. He says, وَالْبَاقِيَاتُ الصَّالِحَاتُ خَيْرٌ عِنْدَ رَبِّكَ ثَوَابًا وَخَيْرٌ أَمَلًا. What is left with your Lord is better as a reward and better for you to be hopeful with. Keep your trust in with what is with God. Don't have trust with what is in your hand. This is the meaning of zuhud. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to make us of az-zahideen, of those that hold firmly onto their beliefs and their religion and turn back to the Quran, turn back to Ahlul Bayt, Turn back to the scholars so they can understand their religion. Not sit and listen to whoever's vocal, whoever has the loudest mouth, whoever has the most tweets, whoever has the most Instagram posts. Turn to what the scholars are saying, what the scholars are teaching. They're teaching you the teachings of Ahlul Bayt. Salawatullahi wa salamu alayhim ajma'een. We ask Allah to hasten the reappearance of our master Al-Hujjat ibn al-Hasan al-Mahdi arwahun fidah. And we ask Allah Azza wa Jal to accept our actions. We ask Allah not to take us from this world until He is pleased with us. We ask Allah to have mercy on our deceased, to cure our sick. We ask Allah to open the paths to Karbala again, to open the paths to the Hajj without us going through all the formalities, not to make us get treated like Novak Djokovic was treated when he came into this country. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal to take us from this world when He's pleased with us. We ask Allah bihaqq al-Hussein that we are given the shafa'a of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein وإلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات وإلى أرواح موتانا وموتاكم وإلى أرواح موتى الحاضرين, and those that are Sami والسامعين and everyone that's listening. رحم الله من قرأ سورة المباركة الفاتحة مسبوقة بالصلاة على محمد وآل محمد.